In this episode of the Well Aware podcast, we're joined by Tim Walsh, outdoor educator, instructor trainer, and experiential recovery leader for a conversation about healing through nature. Drawing from more than 30 years of work in outdoor education, mental health, and substance use recovery, Tim shares how outdoor experiences can help people reconnect with themselves, navigate life's challenges, and build resilience in recovery. Let's get started.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Well Aware podcast. I'm Dr. Lauren. I have the pleasure of being our Chief Medical Officer here at Aware Recovery Care. And today I'm joined by a super special guest, Tim Walsh, who brings his expertise as an outdoor educator, a recovery advocate, and an experiential leader to talk about healing, recovery, and personal transformation, really in the context of nature, which is something that's not talked about a lot. So welcome, Tim. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you, Dr. Lauren. It's a pleasure to be here.
And where does this podcast find you? Your background is absolutely stunning. Tell us
where literally in my backyard. I've got this cute little cabin tucked away in our back 40, which is not actual 40, back acre. And I'm in Falls Village, Connecticut.
Oh, just beautiful. And it looks like warm enough maybe to wear a t-shirt. Are we in
Yep,
t-shirt?
my t-shirt. Yep.
Nice.
Beautiful day out today. It's, overcast and raining, which to me is beautiful.
Yeah.
Sun's coming and going.
Well, can you start by telling our listeners just a little bit about yourself, kind of your background, your story, what drew you to the outdoors, and what adventure recovery is really all about?
Absolutely. I'd be honored. So as a kid, I was an outdoor kid. I grew up down in Fairfield County, Connecticut, in Norwalk. And any little patch of woods that I could find, I'd run into and disappear all day. And then as I went through some life stuff as a kid that was really difficult, I found substance use to be a wonderful solution to the dis-ease that I was feeling as a emerging teenager. And I just jumped in the deep end at 11 years old. And from 11 years old till 22 years old, I was on a very fast track to self-destruction through substance use and untreated, mental illness. And that was in the 70s and 80s. And as my life got progressively darker and darker, I, of course, spent less and less time in the woods and more time in places that you tend to find people who are really deep in that world of substance use. And then after a lot of attempts by my family to try to redirect me, trying to get me different levels of professional help, I finally crashed and burned to a point where I was willing to ask for help. And I wound up going up to Kent, Connecticut, up into the boonies, at least comparatively to where I was used to being. And I spent a full year actually in treatment. And back then the treatment was 3 12-step meetings a day. But I got to work in the kitchen and actually as a paid gig. So I kind of joke that I've been working in the field ever since. And what was amazing about being up in Kent is I got to literally run up and down Kent Falls State Park almost every day. I got to explore the northwest corner of Connecticut. I got to reconnect to nature almost from day one. I got a sponsor who said, at 22 years old, kid, you're never going to stick around just going to church basements. So we got to go do some fun stuff. So he's a guy who really kind of introduced me to outdoor skills experiences. So I'd been like a, backpacker, I guess, as a teenager, but not to the extreme level of what this guy turned me on to. So whitewater kayaking, downhill mountain biking. He had nothing to do with me as a snowboarder. He was a skier. This is back when snowboarding was brand new. Skydiving, you name it. We would spend the weekends going out doing really radical outdoor stuff. And then I'd spend my work week, being of service to the community that, helped save my life. So there was this really neat integration of the two. And in my work day, I got to take a 2-hour break and I would just run into the woods. And, if you've ever been to Kent Falls, it's just truly one of the most beautiful waterfalls in the country, quite frankly. And I've been to a lot of them. And it just gave me the opportunity to burn off a lot of energy as a 22-year-old that sitting in, circles and sitting inside all day was not conducive for me. So I really got lucky or blessed to have that opportunity, both to have that mentorship and to have that type of environment and that level of responsibility so early on. My job was to wake up at 5 a.m. and make breakfast, open the place up, turn on the lights and make breakfast for 45 people. So
Wow.
all of those to me are really key components as to not only why I've maintained my recovery for 34 years. I actually just celebrated in March, but to really embrace these kind of core values of recovery that were instilled in me and then turn them into a lifestyle and then turn them into a business, if you will. So
Yeah. And
that's
a
kind of the
college.
story in a short version. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so fascinating because, I think the concept of like nature being healing is not necessarily new, but what is new and different, I think, about your story is specifically connecting nature and the outdoors to the healing process in recovery from substance use disorders. And I'm curious to hear more about that. You mentioned one aspect that was healing, I think, which is just physically being able to move around more and burn off some of that excess energy. But what else do you think about nature is specifically really conducive to the healing journey for folks in recovery?
Well, for me, the first part was realizing that I wasn't alone. And for those who are familiar with 12-step recovery, there you often see a sign in a meeting that says you are not alone. And that was very significant for me because my whole life I felt very apart from. And that was before even substance use. And I feel like that was why substances worked so well. They helped me kind of just forget that I felt alone and felt all of a sudden a part of something else. So being able to sit outside, especially after burning off energy, the nervous energy, and listen to the water, listen to the birds. Why I chose to sit out here now is the bird song around me. I don't know if you can hear it in the background. It's
Yes, I can.
amazing.
It almost sounds like a recording. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, and what I've learned over the years is they're responding to me right now. They're not just talking to each other. They're talking to about me to each other. Like, what's going on with this dude over here? And of course, they're ignoring me at the same time. But what I found fascinating about all aspects of nature, the longer I spent time outside sober, was amazing just stillness in myself. And later on, I learned that that might be considered a form of mindfulness. I was encouraged to meditate, and I had a hard time sitting still. But when I spent energy, running through the woods, going rock climbing, going kayaking, going snowboarding, I just found that after that initial energy was kind of released, the stillness came way easier.
Mm.
It was the result, letting go of some of that more, just 22-year-old energy. It wasn't, negative energy by any means. So the connection piece was huge. Just realizing, in 12-step recovery, there's the path of finding a higher power. I was raised in a very religious household that did not resonate for me. So what I was, told that an acronym for God is great outdoors, and that was perfect. And then there's the kind of like the mystical side, even where the longer I spent outside, the more I engaged with the natural world, the trees, the rocks, not just the animals, right? Just like really understanding that there's something else here. there's an underlying energy of peace, even in the chaos that is nature. Nature has a lot going on. So for me, it was really the invitation that nature provided to just kind of keep seeking a deeper connection that ultimately led me back to a deeper connection to myself and then made me more present in my relationships. And still to this day, it's my daily medicine. I truly consider it such. And what's funny is when people say, this is relatively new, I'm like, no, it's the oldest medicine we've got, guys.
Yeah, that's
we,
really
we,
true.
we've spent way more time as a species outside than inside. We are
Yeah.
outside cats.
I love your phrasing of using God as the great outdoors
Mm.
because as a physician, I find I'm always advocating for 12-step programs, smart recovery, I mean everything. But to be fair, one of the most common criticisms or maybe hesitations that patients have about 12-step is, well, it's a very traditional God-based program. And I'm always saying the same thing, like higher power can be nature. Higher power can be whatever brings you purpose and meaning and fulfillment. And so I love that you're using that message, I think, in an even more creative way to say it doesn't have to be God like sitting in clouds with angels. It sounds like in a much more everyday, maybe relatable way that folks can engage with?
I used to joke that I went straight to the Colombians for my cocaine. So today I go straight to God through nature,
I
like that.
love that.
It's the original source of our inspiration for this idea of religion or spirituality. It's been, by the way, in the 34 years of my recovery and my journey of being a seeker and being an adventurer, I've really sought out all different types of wisdom traditions that are ancient and indigenous. And man, they all say the same thing. They're all like, oh yeah, we know this has
Yeah.
been around a long time, man. Keep going, keep looking, keep digging.
Slightly different branding, same ultimate content.
Exactly. Yeah. Same message. Yeah.
Well, you've worked with individuals, it sounds like, at so many different stages of life and recovery. What are some of the common themes you see people struggling with when it comes to finding purpose or direction, either, when they're in active use or after? What are some of the common things that come up, and how do you help folks navigate that?
The biggest hurdle is self-doubt by far. The biggest hurdle is I can't do this, whatever X is. I can't do 24 minutes, let alone 24 hours. I can't do 24 days. I can't do the hard thing, right? I can't do the next step. I can't do the next ask. It's just too much. It's overwhelming. And a lot of that self-doubt is a natural result of what I've experienced personally is letting myself down, let alone everyone else around me. Having high expectations for myself and never being able to attain them because I was quote unquote handicapped, for lack of a better term. There's probably better terms, but just really struggling with any sense of self that was positive made it very difficult to really accomplish any new goal. So for me and our organization, we just start where you are. Breath. Start with a breath. Can you breathe in? Okay, good. Can you exhale? Really mean it? Okay. So you have agency. You just took an intentional breath. Did that feel good? Yeah. Okay, let's take two. More is better. That's one place where addiction got it right. More is better. All right. So now let's take two breaths. All right. Is that better? A little deeper, a little longer? Great. Now let's do three. And there's a rule of survival. They call it the rule of three. 3 breaths means you're safe. If you can take 3 deep, intentional breaths, you are safe. And what we know about trauma and the way trauma shows up in the body is it tells us we're not safe because of we weren't safe, right? We hold on to, our body holds on to it, right? So just to take those 3 deep breaths, and by the way, if you're going to do 3 deep breaths, why not go outside? Because there's more oxygen available to you out here. It's cleaner. The air is better out here than it is inside. The trees are doing their job to make sure we have air to breathe. And once you have those 3 deep breaths, you have an awareness like, okay, I have agency. All right, now what motion can we take? Let's set ourselves in motion because we're designed for motion, not sedentary. We're not designed to sit all day. We're designed to move all day. So let's move one physical step in the direction of whatever this challenge may be. So a walk in the woods, a very simple, walk in a park, a walk around the yard, a walk down the block, but paying attention to the trees that are planted along the way. And if you're in the heart of a city and you can't find a tree, keep walking until you get, to one. I just notice the difference in the movement, what it's created in your physiology, and more importantly, in your mental awareness about, oh, you just did that thing that you thought you couldn't, right? Which is just move, just to get off the couch, right? And then for us, the kind of leaping through a few stages, if you will, we then introduce outdoor skills. So we teach people the technical capacities to thrive in the outdoors. So that rule of 3 of survival is 3 deep breaths, 3 minutes without air. You're not going to make it, right? So if you can maintain your breath for 3 whole minutes, like really conscious breathing, man, you're thriving. Now we can go to 3 hours in severe weather without shelter, right? And then if we don't have shelter, we're going to go over the edge. So we need to really make sure our shelter. So what is shelter in a recovery process? It's, therapeutic support, it's community support, it's family support, it's peer support, it's support system, right? You got to get in the center of the herd, as I like to say. right?
I
Get
like that.
surrounded by people who know what you're dealing with, or at least some part of it. That's shelter, right? Then we have 3 days without water. So what's your water source? What is water of recovery? The water of recovery to me is that initial wisdom that's just kind of sparking aha moments. Oh, you feel like that? Oh, you think like that? Oh, that's the insight that I've been missing, right? So it's those little kind of bright, shiny moments of that's the water of recovery. And then 3 weeks to 30 days without food, right? So get your food. So the food is like the deep knowledge and the deep wisdom.
Mhm.
And what's interesting for us is we follow that track in some of the work we do, especially some of the individual work, where that first 3 minutes is let's do some breath work, right? This first 3 hours, let's figure out our shelter. Where are we staying? How are we setting up camp? What are we doing? Those first 3 days is we're traveling together to find an activity, or we're going to try a few different things to like lock into an activity that we really want to learn. And
Mhm.
then the next 3 weeks, we're going to practice the skills of that activity. So
Mhm.
maybe it's rock climbing, maybe it's whitewater kayaking, maybe it's navigation in the backcountry, or just off trail. Maybe it's just sitting still in the forest and feeling a part of the forest. Maybe it's
Mm.
learning how to carve a spoon. So there's so many different techniques and tools that we can introduce to folks that within 3 weeks, they have agency to create a life for themselves out of literally almost nothing, or
Yeah.
seemingly so, right? Seemingly so. And then the nuance of what happens in nature is nature responds, nature comes in. And we've been trained, unfortunately, lions, tigers, and bears, oh my, that's what's out there, right? In the deep, dark forest. Well, I just saw a great big black bear 10 feet away from me yesterday at the corner of my road, right? And just we had a little conversation. You're going that way, I'm going this way. And you keep going that way because I don't want you in my trash. you know, we more time we spend out here, we realize we're part of it. We have the opportunity to be part of it. And then that translates back to the stressful environments that we actually have kind of contrived for ourselves. So for us, it's all about teaching that agency as early as we can, giving people the access to their own inner ability to seek their own pathway, right? And
Mm.
their own skill set and their own insights. And just, we say pour gasoline on that fire. As we see
Mhm.
the spark, blow that spark into flame, and then let's just keep fueling that internal fire.
Yeah. You know what I especially like as a psychiatrist about your approach is that process it sounds like you go through to instill self-confidence is not just telling somebody you can do it. I believe in you. Because a lot of times patients, with trauma histories have really powerful cognitive distortions. And it doesn't
Yes.
matter how many times you say that. It sounds like what you're doing is a lot more like doable, concrete, and in the long run powerful by showing them through their own actions with baby steps, whether it be breathing once, breathing 3 times, walking outdoors, showing them how to believe in themselves through their actions, which I imagine is a lot more effective than just telling somebody something that they don't believe to begin with, which is fascinating.
Yeah, what I love about that, and what's interesting to me is how many psychiatrists tend to really get what we're doing faster than a lot of other therapeutic interventions. And I'm not knocking them. It's just because there's so much theory in their practices, whereas you guys are dealing with the hard nuts and bolts of the biology, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So I think that's why we tend to gel well with psychiatrists.
Yeah, and I'm
But
also liking your advice for parents too. I can
oh
think
yeah,
of several times with my 5-year-old and 8-year-old where they've said, "I can't do this." My daughter last night, I can't sleep in my bed, mommy. I can't do it. I can't do it." And it's not very effective to say, "Yes, you can," if they don't believe it. But if you can show through these really small things how to build their confidence through actions, you're just giving me some great free parenting tips. It sounds like the point is it's widely applicable. It's very effective with substance use disorder treatment, but has so many applications that could help folks.
I have a long-standing, I won't say it's a theory, it's a fact. It's proven itself over and over again. Human beings are by nature curious, and capable. It's that early childhood stuff that no, you can't, or no, you shouldn't, or don't, right? Don't, or the worst one ever, because I said so, right? That really have an impact. Quick story. My daughter, when I have twin 19-year-olds, very amazing human beings themselves. As of now, they're just thriving. I think she was 11. I was making dinner. I said, "Hey, can you go light the wood stove in the living room while I'm making dinner?" She said, "Sure." 15 minutes go by and I hear her kind of swearing under her breath. She comes stomping into the kitchen. She says, "I can't find my fire kit, Dad." I'm like, "Use the lighter, like just get." She's like, "I don't know how." So I literally burst out crying because my 11-year-old daughter knows how to use a flint and steel to light a fire, but doesn't know how to use a thumb wheel, the sacred
Yeah.
wheel, right? So to me, that's a great example, right? That we can we've lost so much of this, where we had no choice but to do hard things as a family, right? We had no
Yeah.
choice but to go out and dig the roots and gather the berries, and we were gatherer hunters, not hunter gatherers, right? We've always been opportunivores, right? So we did it in community, we did it in small community, we did it in family units, in multiple family units, and that's the stuff we've lost. And we've contrived all these goalposts now, and we've come up with all these like really weird rituals and sports and stuff to try to augment what's missing. It's just, it's not as effective. Whereas you just take kids out in the woods and you let them be feral, and they figure stuff out pretty quick, you
Yeah.
know? So for me, what's really cool about this being my recovery journey is, as an outdoor educator by trade, and that's what I got into as soon as I left Highwatch, is I saw the opportunity working with young kids who were thriving, in an outdoor leadership organization, and then very quickly realized, oh wait, it's the recovery community that has all these like really tough skill sets that they learned the hard way that can be amazing guides. In fact, the best guides. And I'm not knocking people who don't have that experience, but when you've walked through fire and you've come out the other side and you have a story to tell of that fire and what it means to you, you are now able to stand on the edge for the person coming through their personal fire. You don't ever jump back in to save them, right? But you can stand on the edge and coax them out.
Yeah.
And you never want to rob a person of the dignity of their own suffering, right? You want to give them the opportunity to just get right to that edge of complete, combustion, and then guide them out. And then from there, it's just, okay, now we can use all those skills. We call it Jedi training in reverse. We're taking them from the dark side of the force to the light side of the force. But there's skills to develop to get you onward. And what's amazing for us is once we get a client locked into one of those skill sets or a couple of the skill sets, they take off. They become climbers, they become paddlers, they become outdoors people, they become guides, they become this new identity, right? And they're able to leave that old story behind, except to guide the next person.
So beautiful. I mean, your work is so meaningful, and all that you're doing, I think, just puts hope in the recovery community, which is, what we need most these days. And I just thank you so much for coming on and joining us today. Your perspective on recovery, on healing, on personal transformation is just so refreshing and thoughtful. I know our listeners are going to resonate with that. As we're wrapping up here, tell our listeners, where can they find you and learn more about the great work that you're doing?
So adventurerecovery.com is our website. Easiest way to get on. Adventure recovery hashtags or whatever. If you plug us into any of the algorithms out there, we have all kinds of social media stuff. It's pretty cool. We joke amongst ourselves that our feed looks pretty radical to most people, but it's accessible to all.
Love it.
Don't feel overwhelmed by what we look like out there, just because we tend to do some pretty radical stuff. Most of what we're doing is actually very entry level and very accessible. But one thing I just want to plug, if I could, is we have been getting more and more professionals showing up and asking us to take them out. We work in conjunction with a lot of different treatment organizations, schools. We work in the prevention side as well as the recovery side. But we're finding more and more professionals are like, I need to change up my practice. I need to change up, my own personal, sitting in front, especially nowadays with the Zoom. And then, so we've really responded to that. And we've been offering a lot of different ways for professionals to get together. And we do a lot of retreats for professional organizations and such as well. But my point is, our whole model is designed for each individual experience, whether it's an individual client, an individual family, an individual treatment team working with a client, right? Individual treatment organization, school. Everything is curated just the same way we work with the individual person, because it just works better that way. So we have a lot of skills and stuff that we can plug in, but the goal is to like, how's this fit in your life?
Yeah.
We want it to be successful for you. We don't want it to just be what we call adventure in a can. That was fun. And then nothing ever comes out of it.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. That's all for today's episode of the Well Aware podcast. I could talk to Tim for hours, but we will reluctantly wrap up here. And
thank you for the work you all do at Aware. You guys are amazing.
Thank you.
I've had the privilege of knowing your co-founders at the very beginning, and watching it take off has just been such a joy.
Oh, good. So happy to hear that. Yeah, it's always rewarding working in the recovery space, but I think Aware really takes it to a special new level with just the innovation and the patient-centered care and the team approach. So honored to be a part of it myself. For those of you listening, thank you for tuning in. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe. We are available wherever you get your podcast. And until next time, thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.